Have you ever wondered what secrets lie behind some of New York's most iconic buildings? From hidden underground tunnels to ghostly apparitions said to haunt their hallowed halls. Today we're going to take you on a journey through time to uncover weird and surprising facts from the history of architecture in New York. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be amazed by the stories behind some of the city's most beloved landmarks. Did you know that beneath the bustling streets of Manhattan lies a secret tunnel system connecting some of the city's most iconic buildings? It all started in the early 20th century when a group of wealthy businessmen wanted to get from their offices in Midtown to the shops and restaurants in the garment district without having to brave the crowds and traffic. So they hatched a plan to create a series of underground walkways connecting the two areas. What makes these tunnels even more intriguing is that they were built beneath what was then the world's largest train station, Pennsylvania Station. This required innovative engineering and construction techniques as workers had to excavate the earth while maintaining the structural integrity of the station above, and the result was a labyrinth of underground passages hidden just beneath the surface of one of the busiest parts of the city. While the tunnels were never open to the general public, they remained in use for decades, carrying thousands of people each day. However, as the city grew and changed, the tunnels fell into disrepair and were eventually closed off. Today, only a few entrances to the tunnels remain, and their existence is largely forgotten. Some say the tunnels are still used by the city's elite to avoid the paparazzi, while others believe they may be part of a larger underground network that runs beneath the entire city. These tunnels offer a fascinating glimpse into a little-known part of New York's history, and serve as a reminder of the ingenuity and determination of the people who built them. Now let's move on to our next amazing fact. But first, we want to send a big thank you to someone for supporting this channel and making videos like this one possible. Have you ever stood at the corner of Broadway and 23rd Street and looked up at the majestic Flatiron Building and wondered how it got there? Well, the story is full of twists and turns, just like the building's famous triangular shape. You see, the Flatiron Building was the first skyscraper to be built in New York with a setback from the street, which created a unique wedge-shaped lot on the corner of Broadway and Fifth Avenue. This unusual shape presented quite a challenge for the architects, but they were determined to make it work. After several failed attempts to build on the site, a developer decided to hold an architectural competition to see who could come up with the best design for the space. The winner was an up-and-coming architect named Daniel Burnham, who had the ingenious idea of building a skyscraper with a setback from the street, allowing more light to reach the businesses below. However, there was one problem. The zoning commission had strict height regulations in place to prevent buildings from blocking too much sunlight from reaching the ground. So Burnham and his team had to find a way to make their design fit within these regulations. They accomplished this by creating a series of setbacks that stepped back from the street, giving the building its signature triangular shape. But this wasn't the only challenge they faced. The building's steel frame was so tall and slender that it required a new and untested technology called a batter system to prevent it from swaying in the wind. Despite these challenges, the Flatiron Building was completed in 1902 and became an instant landmark. Its unique shape and innovative design caught the attention of people from around the world and made Daniel Burnham's name synonymous with modern architecture. Today, the Flatiron Building remains a symbol of New York's architectural heritage and a testament to the ingenuity of the architects who designed it. Now let's move on to our next amazing fact about New York's architectural history. But before we do, please subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us out. Thanks. Did you know that one of New York's most famous buildings almost didn't happen because of a friendly rivalry between two prominent architects? The Chrysler Building was designed by William Van Allen as a symbol of American progress and modernity. He wanted to create a building that would be taller than any other in the world and would celebrate the country's industrial might. But he faced stiff competition from another architect, John Van Vleck, who was designing the neighboring Bank of Manhattan Building. Veles wanted to create a more traditional and stately building that would complement the classic architecture of the area. The competition between the two architects was fierce, and neither one was willing to give up. In the end, the Chrysler Building was completed first, but only by a matter of days. The race to the top had an unexpected twist when the owner of the Bank of Manhattan Building realized that the Chrysler Building spire would make it the tallest building in the world. In order to keep his building competitive, he commissioned Willis to add a new spire to the top of his own tower. This friendly rivalry resulted in two of the most iconic buildings in New York. each striving to outdo the other in terms of height, style, and innovation. The Chrysler Building's Art Deco design and soaring spire quickly made it a symbol of American progress and modernity, while the Bank of Manhattan Building's more traditional design appealed to those who preferred a more classic aesthetic. The competition between the two architects not only resulted in two of New York's most beloved buildings, but also left a lasting legacy on the city's skyline. Today, both the Chrysler Building and the Bank of Manhattan Building stand as testaments to the power of competition and the genius of these two architects. Now, have you ever heard the story of the ghost that haunts the Empire State Building? The story goes back to the early days of construction, when a steelworker named James B. Duffy was working on the 66th floor. One day, he was adjusting a bolt on the building's steel frame when he was struck by a stray piece of metal and killed instantly. His body was then lowered down the side of the building wrapped in a blanket, and his death was ruled an accident. But many of the construction workers believed that Duffy's death was no accident, but rather the result of sabotage. They claimed that the bolt that struck him had been deliberately loosened by one of his co-workers, who had a grudge against him. Since then, people have reported seeing the ghost of James B. Duffy on the 66th floor, dressed in the clothes of a steelworker from the 1930s. Some say he walks along the steel beams as if he's still working, while others claim to hear the sound of his hammering echoing through the empty floors. There have also been reports of strange lights and shadows seen on the 66th floor late at night, leading many to believe that the spirit of James B. Duffy still lingers here. While there's no concrete evidence to support these claims, the story has become a popular local legend. In fact, there are several other stories of ghosts haunting various floors of the Empire State Building, each with their own tragic tale. For example, there is the story of a woman who fell to her death from the 78th floor after being pushed by her lover, and the apparition of a former employee who died in a freak elevator accident. Whether or not these stories are true, they make for a fascinating look into the history of one of New York's most iconic buildings and the people who have come and gone throughout its 100-year lifespan. And now we've arrived at our final fact about New York's architectural history. But before we say goodbye, we want to ask you to like this video if you enjoyed learning about the weird and surprising facts from the history of architecture in New York. Your support means a lot to us and helps us continue producing videos that bring history to life. Now let's dive into our last amazing fact. Did you know that New York almost had a very different skyline thanks to a bizarre law passed in 1916? At the time, the city's leaders were concerned about the growing number of skyscrapers and the potential danger they posed in case of a fire. So they passed a law limiting the height of future buildings based on the width of the street they faced. This meant that buildings on narrow streets would be limited to just a few stories, while those on wider streets could be much taller. The law was intended to promote the construction of low-rise buildings throughout the city, leading to a more evenly distributed skyline. However, this plan quickly fell apart as architects and developers found ways to circumvent the law's restrictions. For example, they began building setbacks into their designs, which allowed them to create taller buildings without increasing their overall footprint. This led to the iconic stepped-back skyscrapers that we see today, such as the Chrysler Building and the Empire State Building. The failed height restriction law not only had an unintended consequence of shaping New York's skyline, but also served as a catalyst for innovation in architectural design. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest works of art are born out of constraints and limitations. And with that, ends our journey through the weird and surprising facts from the history of architecture in New York. But before we go, we want to hear from you. Which fact surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below.